Okay, so we have an exciting morning this morning planned. We're going to go a little bit further. Got a new handout, but more important than that, we have a meme created by three of you. I don't know who it was, or three teachers yesterday. I'd like to give credit if this is yours. It is the famous paralyzed chicken. So if you created this yesterday in your G Suite class, kudos to you. Thank you. Again, we've got today's slides at this short URL if you want to pull those up. But mostly what we want to do today is just talk at the table and work at the table, and our goal is the engaging qualities. We're going to try to connect the engaging qualities to the C5W work because they are integral to that communication piece, to that creativity, to all the things that we're looking and working towards. The engaging qualities are the component cobblestones that get us there. Let me give you a chance to find that URL, and then we'll move forward. Anybody have a thought or yesterday that you need to share, or a question from yesterday you need to ask? You didn't see me? How many saw me? How many have me? Okay. I'm sorry. And you know, this is really very disturbing because it may happen for months. I may have ruined bathing for some of you for a while. Okay. But it does speak to how the brain wants to make sense and connect self. So here are our C5Ws. These are the things we're working towards. And what I'd like to ask you to do is we're going to do our first opening activity this way. There are 6 components if we have the 5 C's and the W. What I'd like to ask you to do is go around the table. Whoever talks first gets to pick the one they're going to talk about. All I want you to do, no writing, nothing, just talking. Take critical thinking, person number 1, and tell me the role of engagement to critical thinking. Second person takes wellness. What is the role of engagement in wellness? If we use the definition that cognitive engagement is what we're after, making meaning. So how does making meaning impact each of those 6? Let's just take 5 minutes to go around the table until we get all 6 out. If there are more than 6 people at the table, the rest of you are encouraged to jump in, add on, extend, say yeah, but. Fast round robin, 6 ideas connected back to cognitive engagement. Go. When you're ready, let's come back together.
Google. Yes.
Okay, so let me put you back together. A question that has come forth, which honestly I'm rethinking yesterday. If I could go back, we should have done this better. I'll take the blame for this. 2 cables have asked the question, where are the 5 C's coming from, and why are there 5? If we look across the nation over the last 5-6 years and look at people who are doing research on how a system moves forward, whether that system is a single grade level, a department, a school, or a county system, division, what we're finding is that all the research is sort of lining up. There are only so many things that really move a system. I can't keep my researchers straight in my head. Somebody says there are 7 C's. Another person says there are 5 C's. Another person says there are 3 C's. What we know is the research that shows a school moving forward or a system really moving forward has a tendency to focus on one thing. This is 6. I get that. But the same thing I know about the task rubric is if you work on one of the right things, as you move that forward, it drags the others along. If we think about just taking the idea that we want kids to, we want to enhance the communication in school so that kids are not just talking at each other, but talking to each other through our content and making meaning in our content during that communication. The informate that our school played with and shared in Arkansas, that you tell me what you saw and what sense you made so that I also can see your truth and then share mine and connect the two. If we just played with that idea of communication, we're going to move critical thinking. We'll probably move creativity. We'll probably move the others. The one for me that is interesting that you guys added that I really appreciate, that I don't think that the research has caught up or the research is not as solid yet on, is your big idea of wellness. I think the wellness thing is a really important thing. And I'm not just talking about the physical wellness. I'm talking about emotional wellness, social wellness. I struggle just a little bit because I come from the state that was #1 in the nation for student obesity. We have the most obese student population in the nation. And when Mike Huckabee was our governor in the early 90s, he decided after his gastric bypass that we should get healthier. And so it became illegal in the state of Arkansas to offer food to kids. Now, I have to admit, I know, having taught kindergarten and 5th grade and high school, children would do a lot of stuff for a Jolly Rancher. They really will. I mean, that's not engagement, that's just motivation. That's the chicken and the... but they'll do that, so it became illegal in Arkansas. We also were the only state in the nation to measure our obesity epidemic through data. For 7 years in a row, kids in 2nd grade through 10th grade had to come to the nurse's office once a quarter and have their body mass index calculated, which was placed on their report card. And guess what happened after 7 years of measuring body mass index? We were still #1. We were looking at the wrong data. Body mass index from quarter to quarter is an exit data point. It is not a daily measure of success. If we had just said this, hey, let's just track how much our kids move. Let's have kids move 8 minutes more a day. Do you know that on Monday at 3:30 we would know if we've met our goal? Did they? They did. Yeah, we met our goal. And if we keep meeting the daily goals, then we're going to see the end results. This is basically what all the systems research has been looking at. What do we do on a daily basis that causes the system and the kids within that system to grow and move? So again, in Stafford, you guys dug through, I wasn't part of the teams that did this, but you dug through and decided these are the 5, 6 things that we want to focus on. And I say again, you can't focus on 6 things. So you pick the one in 2nd grade this quarter that we really want to work on, knowing that if we engage kids in them cognitively, they all move. That's the intent. Brainwheel #4, I want to play back with that for just a minute as we start today and talk about the engaging qualities. Brainwheel #4 from John Medina says this: human beings do not pay attention to boring things. So what is the opposite of boring? Me. I don't mean John Antonetti, I mean me. If you've ever been with a toddler, you know that they use the pronoun me before they use the pronoun I, because the world exists around me and for me instead of I go into the world. It's all about me. And there's something really important that we have to remember about that. If your Algebra 2 doesn't feel like it's about me, you better hope I like you and I'm motivated. Because me liking you is enough motivation for some kids to do the work well. Me wanting my parents to pat me on the back and say, I'm proud of you, is enough to motivate me. I'm not using the word engage, I'm using the word motivate. What do you do for the kids who don't have that motivation? Then the content has to be about me. I joked yesterday about posting the objective. We don't get the objective piece as well as another group of professionals. I can prove that posting an objective doesn't work if we don't do it well. Raise your hand if you've ever received a speeding ticket. Okay? Now keep your hand raised if the speed limit was posted. See, it didn't work, did it? Because me was going fast and needed to get there. But it's interesting because law enforcement professionals have been trained in every state and 2 Canadian provinces that I can speak of personally, that when they pull you, by the way, Virginia, you put a lot of points on your tickets. I have had 2 letters in Arkansas because of you. They don't want you crossing that median. I learned that. But when they pull you over, do you know what they ask you first? After they get the driver's license registration, they ask you, do you know why I stopped you? Because deep down, whether you say it out loud or not, you will say in your head at least, me was speeding. Me was doing 85. And the reason they ask you that is because if you say to yourself, I know why me was stopped, me is less likely to fight it. Then the second question they ask you is posting the objective. Do you know what the speed limit is? Because at great taxpayer expense, we posted it about 20 miles back there. I've been chasing you ever since. So again, it's that idea, how do you make it about me? I want to go back to the emotion. If you can make me feel like it's relevant to me, and that's the hardest part of anything we're going to talk about. How do you make something relevant to me? If you let me figure it out, me's in. Me is in. I want to take this a little bit further and share our definition of engagement and where it came from, again, through the research. Philip Schlechte from the Center for Student Engagement did a number of research studies across the country and basically said there are 5 ways kids engage. I don't like that word. Let's say this. There are 5 ways kids expend energy in the classroom. Okay, let's just start there because we're ramping up our definition. The first way kids engage in the classroom is they will find work and value, meaning and value in the work, so they will do more energy, give more energy to that work if they value it, the work. I love that. He then says there are 2 other ways that kids will give you energy that works just as well for us as a system, and that is strategic compliance and ritual compliance. I'll define these by talking about triplets I taught one year. I taught a set of triplets when I taught AP Chemistry, and because we have a policy that brothers and sisters aren't in the same classroom, I had 1 first period, 1 second period, 1 fourth period. And so the Taylor brothers were all in my classroom, and Michael was in first period. Oh my gosh, everyone wants a Michael. He would ask me questions in the hallway. He would stop and say, I noticed that when my mom forgot to put the spaghetti, forgot to put salt in the spaghetti, da-da-da-da-da-da. How come da-da-da-da-da? We were always talking chemistry because he wanted it. He wanted the chemistry. He found meaning in the meaning of chemistry, and the periodic table became his pillowcase. I love teaching Michael. Myron in second period was just as much fun to teach, but for a different reason. Myron was highly competitive. He wanted to be the top performing triplet in the family. He wanted to make the best grades. He had been planning on valedictorian's address since second grade. So when I assigned work, because he wanted me to praise him, his mom and dad to think he was the smartest, he wanted to get to an East Coast college, because he was so motivated for the positive, I would call what he did strategic compliance. He was after something. It wasn't the chemistry. It wasn't what I was selling. It was all the byproducts. The third brother, and I always struggle, Marcus, in fourth period, Marcus was the kid who was doing what he was supposed to avoid being the least triplet, to avoid being compared to his brother. He didn't want to be called on, so he would do his work so we would leave him alone. We know those kids too. That's called ritual compliance. I'm doing what I need to, please leave me alone. I'll do it, but I don't want anything bad to happen. Please don't say ugly things to my mom about me. Please don't compare me to my brothers, and we'll be fine. I have a problem calling that engagement. But if we say that's the way kids participate in or engage and bring their energy, I think that makes sense. Then the last 2 I even struggle on the list because these are kids who don't engage. It's called retreatism. You've seen that kid. Some of us, for the sake of sanity and classroom management, have made silent visual deals with children. The child who walks in like, I love literature. I love literature, I really do. I'll be fine in your class, but I'm going to be reading under the desk, okay? If you don't call me out, I'll just read silently and I won't bother you. Good to go? Excellent, good. So that child just does their thing, like all teachers, I have struggled with the onset of the device in front of you. Because what if right now you're thinking, I like her blouse. I wonder where she got that. I'm going to buy that blouse. You might go there because we don't pay attention to boring things. And what John's talking about, you know what? All I'm asking you to do right now is listen. There is no cognitive task. So I can't even worry about what level of engagement you're bringing to the table when the task is listening. Because some of you are thinking, I like cheese. I mean, I actually have been distracted twice as I was speaking. Okay. And then finally, the last level of engagement or energy participation is rebellion. This is the kid who, for some reason, does not only not want himself to be involved in the content, they want to stop everybody else from being in the content. This is classroom terrorism. Okay? We've seen this. It usually speaks to a deeper issue. One of the things I want to say right now before we get much further in the week is when you're doing the visits, when we talk about going into classrooms and looking at students and their learning, we do not worry, oh, this is hard to say. We will not decide the classroom level engagement based upon one child. Because any one child could be having a horrible day. And so even as an administrator, I get worked up when I'm in somebody else's school and we walk in and a kid has his head down on the desk. And people are like, You see that? See that? See that? She did nothing about it. Actually, maybe she knows what happened last night and has made an agreement with that child. You know what? You need to just get yourself together, buddy. This periodic table thing right now is not nearly as important compared to what's happening last night at the hospital. So I don't ever want us to think we can make assumptions about why kids are giving energy. I do want to look at the task because it's really the only thing we have that can move any of these. So another way to say this is this. We're going to call meaning and value, more specifically making meaning, engaged. We're going to call the other two on task. And let's be honest, that is the goal of public school, to be on task. I will plan a task for you of learning. Please do the task, and you shall learn from it. That's the basic premise. And then these others we're going to call off task. And this week's conference is not about the off task child, but I do know this. A child who's off task doesn't think it's about me yet. So how do we make it about me? Here are the 8 engaging qualities we're going to be playing with. They're in the task rubric. You're going to be working with them in your job alike this afternoon, and certainly tomorrow. You'll spend a lot more time with this tomorrow in your job alike. These come from Philip Schlechte's original 12 design components. We reduced them to 8 because when we started talking to kids about what engaged them in the classroom, they never named the other 4. The other 4 were some teacher's idea from a university who said this is engaging children, but children didn't recognize them. So we just started with, hey, what do kids say themselves? They are in an order for us because the most important, John Antonetti's way of thinking, what we've seen, is personal response. When human beings get to tell their version of something, it is about me. And then bookending that is authenticity. If I know that real people do this, then I've got the connection. And so somewhere in the middle is me and my world, and everything else is about me and my world. So if you think about these 8 as a bookend, maybe that'll help a little bit. I want to take you to a classroom where, we're going to do 2 tasks, and I'm going to ask you which one's engaging at the end. They are both excellent tasks. I planned them. The first task, very exciting, is a competition. And only one school will win. Okay? I've met some of you. I have odds on a couple of schools. You will work together. You may use technology, but I want to be clear. I will only grade, because of what Bruce said yesterday, that which is handwritten. It must be handwritten by a member or members of your group. I don't care how you do this task. But I'm going to need a written product. It can be on 1 page. It can be on multiple pages. It can be on lots of Post-it notes. But when you hear the task, you'll see I just need a written product. And to make things a little spicier, we have a time limit. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Are you ready? Again, you may use technology or any resources. Here we go. The task is, oh, look at the strategy going already. Gather up, butts in the air. Okay. Here is task A. List all 50 states in alphabetical order and identify the capital of each. Ready? Begin. Okay. This may be the most competitive division I've worked in. That was fun to watch. So let's score it. Let's score it. Here's how the scoring works. We will independently verify after you self-score. You get 1 point for every state that's in order. If you used abbreviations, remember that MD comes after ME because you're putting the states in alphabetical order. Okay? Count up the number of states you got. How many got all 50 states? Okay, excellent, excellent. But remember, there are extra points for the capitals. Now, add a point for every state capitol building that you correctly drew or illustrated. CAPITOL, the building in which government occurs. How many did not notice the spelling? How many noticed the spelling and thought, poor John, he can't spell? I'm not sure which makes me angrier. Okay, the reality is I did that intentionally just to see if anybody would catch it. But if you put the state capital C-A-P-I-T-A-L, the city in which the state capital O-L is found, I will let you count those. How many people got a total, 50 states, 50 capitals, of 85 or higher? 85 points or higher would be, okay. 90 or higher. 95 or higher. 100%. Shout out your name. Who is this? A.G. Wright. A.G. Wright. Stafford High. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Okay, so how many people got less than 70%? Anybody less than 60%? That's not even passing, is it? Okay. Okay, so I found for some people that was highly engaging. Some of you were just so lucky that you had that person at your table. And then some of us worked very collaboratively. That was our first task. Let's decide why it was engaging for some. The engaging qualities by themselves are not enough to move classrooms. One quality at a time will move that group of kids who are engaged by that quality. So let's go back to the, I'm going the wrong direction. I can work this. What engaging quality made that, for those of you who are most engaged, worth doing? I honestly think there are only 3 that are designed into it. The first one that's designed in it is just novelty and variety. It was a race and somebody won. We haven't done that yet in this 2 days, so I think that just added something for some people. I think learning with others for some groups was really your success moment because you divided the roles. I mean, this group was like, I don't know who was in charge of the letters. You do F through G. You do F. I saw a group back there writing capitals while other people were writing states. It looked like Twister. Cool teamwork. But I think the engaging quality for some of us that made this the most important was competition. Except that's not a quality. What is the quality that competition is based upon? Sense of audience. Now, let's play with that for just a minute. People who are competitive will tell me, I'm competitive about everything. I just love competing. I just love competing. Great. Then you and I are going to name as many operas as we can in 5 minutes. And they'll go, I don't know anything about operas. I don't want to do that. I thought you were competitive. We usually are competitive when we know we have a chance of winning. And then, so what engaging quality comes in? Sense of audience. There are people in this room, and you don't have to point because we know who you are, who want to compete so that everybody else can see me win, and you watch me win. Okay. That's just a human biological need to be the alpha. So I'm okay with that. What we know about sense of audience, and when we talk about later today, is this idea that human beings will give more energy to a task if somebody they care about is going to see the results. And this is an awkward moment then. Because as teachers, we are often that audience for kids. After 2nd grade, I'm going to say we don't count. We are not sense of audience. Because after 2nd grade, they figure out we're supposed to, we're paid to. That's who we are in our heart. We are the people who will give you audience. We are then replaced by peers, by that cute girl, by mom and dad coming, by grandma and grandpa driving down for the football game, coaches, band directors, drama teachers know the value of sense of audience because rehearsals get more intense the closer you get to them filling the stands. So I understand that some of, I mean, boy, there are a couple of in this room, there are a couple of you I'm afraid of after seeing that. I also think there's another novelty and variety piece because some of us were successful because we knew the song. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut. And it's like finally, after all these years, a use for it. It paid off. It paid off. Right. Okay, so we're going to change to another task. Different set of engaging qualities, and we'll see if this one's I don't want to say better, because it's a different task. I want to know if it's just Is it more engaging Is it funner? Is it, what is it? Okay. Task B. Because I did see, and it's the fault of my task, I did see people opt out of that last task. There were people like, I found the website. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Write that down. You need to hurry, you need to hurry. Those are the motivators. You're not going to make it. I mean, I found the best website I could. I don't think we're going to win. Because the task allowed people in the group to opt out, we're going to try to make this more of a personal response start. Everybody needs to grab 3 Post-it notes. In task A, the writing could have just as easily been done here because there was 0 cognition other than recall. It was just recall, or for many of us, it was find the website that retrieves it, or the song that brings it back. This next activity, I need the writing piece to occur personally so you can see your thinking and then manipulate it. Okay, task B is this. Please hear the instructions before you start writing. I want you to list the criteria you would use if you had to move to a new state. For example, I noticed there's some major construction coming out of DC, and I didn't understand. There were just lots of barrels and nobody working. So I called the governor and we made a deal. We're just going to close the state for a while to fix all the roads while we're gone, and we're going to leave for 2 years. I want you to start thinking about how you would decide where to live. Please don't write down on a Post-it note Hawaii. I'm not asking for an answer. I'm asking you to be cognitive about what criteria would be important. I have 3 Post-it notes. If John Antonetti is going to move out of Arkansas, I'm still going to live somewhere where I can garden. One of the important criteria in my life is I need to be able to spend time in my yard. I love doing yard work, and I want that. Now, I will have 2 additional Post-it notes, gardening and then maybe something with something else and something else. On each Post-it note, I would like you to write just a very simple search engine question that could get you going to find information about where can I garden the way I like to garden. So I might ask a question like, where can you grow tomatoes and crepe myrtles? Where can you spend 100 or 250 days out in the yard comfortably? I don't know what my question will be, but you know your criteria has a question under it. And then another criteria in question, another criteria in question. Take 3 minutes just to write what would be important to you as you consider moving, and add a research question. When you share, you post them together. If mine goes with yours, we put them together, but we may only pair. We may only pair. I will not allow clumping. So if somebody says, I wrote down weather. I wrote down weather too. Me too, me too. Well, what did we mean by it? I want a temperate climate. I want all 4 seasons. I want to be able to ski and snow. Which 2 go together best? So you're going to put the best pairs together. You may have to talk more and informate why is mine the best for yours. And I want you to pair until I ask you to stop. So pair and tell me what the pair is. Ready? Play pair, pair, pair. Okay, so I know I'm interrupting again. For those of you who like full completion of a task, I know I'm frustrating a little bit. The tasks are not why we're here. It's analyzing the task and looking for the C's and the W. Some of you, I know, are going to complete it no matter what. Okay. The reality is, I think we got more engaging qualities this time. If we just run through the list, wasn't it predicated upon the fact that we all had 3 ideas, and because we're different people, we have 3 different ideas? Even if we said the same word, we may have meant it a little differently. So I may have said gardening, and you may have said gardening too, but for you it's because you like to have your own fresh vegetables. For me, it's sanity. It's just, I can dig a hole and not think about anything. I like cheese. I'm going to put that there. It died. Move it. It's just relaxation for me. So my gardening might go with your skiing because they're more about relaxation. My gardening might go with your, I'd like to make some part-time money because I could sell my vegetables at the farmer market. Again, it's our thoughts first, and then the learning with others is the cognitive piece. How many people wrote down 3 Post-it notes, and then when you heard somebody else's, you thought, oh, that's more important to me than something I wrote? That happened to me. How many people wrote about moving and then didn't even consider your family? Because it's all about me. I don't know if you're going with me or not. I'm leaving. Okay. Some of us did consider family and moved far away. I'm okay with that too. Okay. There's also, I hope, this elusive quality called emotional intellectual safety, and that is, I can't be wrong. Or if I am wrong, I rewrite myself instead of getting corrected into it. So again, I saw some people who only had 1 or 2 Post-it notes who, after the conversation started, said, oh, I've got to put another, is that okay? I got my other one now. Sure, because we were taking a little bit of control in that tiny little slice of learning. Again, these are small moments. They're not the big product. But I like these more frequently in my classroom because the brain does this. You get 10 minutes. I get 10 minutes in the class to get the kids to pay attention and in. And if it's not about me in the first 10 minutes, research says I lose them at minute 11. And that's the motivated. That's the motivated. So I've got to play with these. I also think the learning with others was exciting as people changed ideas and added to ideas. I would even say this task, as silly as the Post-it note part of it is actually more authentic than the last task because people really do move for the reasons we just wrote down, right? I'll even connect it now to the standard. What standard do you have in the state of Virginia in your SOLs that says students will list the states in alphabetical order and memorize the capitals? Do we have that standard? I don't think you do. There's only one state that asks for that now, and that's Nebraska. I don't know why they're doing it in Nebraska. I guess it's because they don't get to go anywhere. I don't know. Hey, I'm from Arkansas. Let it go. I've been itching to take off my shoes. I will throw them at you. Okay, so the reality is that's another part of emotional intellectual safety, laughter. A lot of people have said this week, you know what I've enjoyed the most so far is just laughing. Do you know why? Because laughter says to us, we're going to be okay. Laughter says we'll make it through this. Laughter is the body's sudden recognition of a truth it already knew or already survived. We don't laugh at the unfamiliar. We laugh when I say Melissa Sue and you're thinking, I'm sitting next to her. Or I talk about Bubba and you're thinking, oh my God, I married him. Twice. Okay. So I think this second activity was more aligned to the standard because I do think we have social studies standards that say analyze reasons people move and or immigrate. And I think they're for the reasons you talked about. Now they may not be specifically gardening or skiing or allergies, but I bet they fell into some really big categories. Anybody got a Post-it note that doesn't fit one of those categories? I'm okay with that. First time I was in a class with kids doing this, these are the categories that 28 fifth graders came up with. I've done the same thing with adults and I get the same categories. Okay. There may be more, and I'm okay with that. My point is this, which task was more engaging? The first task of 50 states? And it's okay if you say, that was more engaging for me. Because that's the person who is competitive and wants engagement when the cognition is not burdening them. That's that 12% moment that we talked about yesterday. I liked the task. I didn't have to think much during it. Yes, ma'am? You enjoyed it? Again, for some people, the competition adds more enjoyment. For some, it debilitates. Yeah, and again, was it because we didn't want to win, we didn't think we could win? I don't know why we opt out, but I think the first task has an engaging quality in it. It may have 2 with learning with others. I think the one we just did had 4. And because it had more qualities, it has a tendency to pull more learners in. So one of the big ideas that comes from our research is this. When 3 qualities are designed into the task, that's when kids always self-report engagement. Let me give you our numbers from our book if I can remember them. When the task has 3 qualities, almost 100% of the time kids will say, I wish we'd do more of that. That was really good. I want to do more of that. When there are 2 qualities that we can articulate and find in the task, 86% of the time kids will say, that was a good task. We need to do more of those. When we drop down to 1, it falls dramatically. And usually the one task that can live by itself is novelty and variety. We're just doing something different, and it's got my attention. It may not have my cognition yet, but it's got my attention. I'll give you an example. We have a teacher in South Carolina who, the first time I walked into his classroom, he is teaching ancient Rome, and he is in full centurion guard regalia. He has his little tunic on and his breastplate and his hat, and he is just teaching away. And he had my attention. That is just novelty. That is so interesting. The next time I was visiting, we were on Egypt, and there he was dressed as Cleopatra. I came in later in the year, and I can't remember what it was, but it was a 3rd costume, and I realized this is not novelty and variety. It's every day. And now for me, we don't have a quality called creepy, but that's just kind of pushing over a little bit, because the 4th day I came in, he didn't have a costume, so he just carried a bear while he spoke. The bear had nothing to do with it. I don't know if it was a security bear. I don't know what it was. But novelty and variety only works when it's different from the norm. So let's play this a little bit further. We put them in order, the pieces in order. We didn't talk about technology yet. What I know is technology in the first task of listing the 50 states took our cognitive 1 and made it a 0. Because we could just find the answer. I could now add technology to this task, and I think the task moves over. The task is powered up by technology. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this website, Find Your Spot. It works very much like what we just did. Because I can put down 3 Post-it notes and think, I still don't know where to live. It's my thinking, but Find Your Spot has this great little moment where you go in and you click in and you answer a whole bunch of questions, and it will tell you where you should live. And I've known for quite some time that I was really happy, that I am really lucky, really blessed, and I'm happy. And when I first went to this website and entered my information, it said, number 2, Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I went to college. Number 1 for me, Charlottesville, Virginia. So if I ever can dig up everything in the yard, we might move this way. And 3rd was Portland, Oregon. I've never even visited, but I'm thinking I should go see that. Somehow there is an algorithm to my personal response. And when technology can enhance that, I think it's worth adding to the equation. Now, some of us are going to be so engaged, like, I really do want to move. I'm going to check out now and go to the website. It's down? How do you know? Then I think adding technology powered up the engagement if you just went there. Okay, so let's play with this one more time. I want to look at the first 3 because the first 3 are what we call the Trinity. Personal response can be, where do you live? Everybody will have a different answer. What I know when I taught kindergarten is every kid wants to tell me their personal response, but then they wanted validation, so sometimes they would diminish their own personal response. I want to talk about capture again. Kids would come to the carpet and I'd say, when you come to the carpet, you're going to tell me your favorite color and 3 things that are that color. And so here we sit on the carpet and I ask the first kid, because we're learning our colors. That's a big deal. Mikey, what's your favorite color? I like red. Well, what are 3 things that are red, Mikey? Santa Claus. Oh, I love Christmas. Valentine's Day. Oh, yeah, that's about love. And blood. I like blood because you know it tastes like eating a penny when blood is red. Oh, that is so cool that you tasted blood. That is so cool. Okay, Mariah. I like red because I like Santa Claus. I like Valentine's Day and I like blood. She doesn't like blood. Why is she saying that? Because she wants what just happened here. And the kindergarten carpet is not that different from anybody else in any relationship. So what I learned was, no, I need you to capture your personal response before you learn with others. Or your learning with others could be influenced too easily. So boys and girls, when you come to the carpet, you bring me a crayon hidden in your hand that is your favorite color. When you sit down on the carpet, I'm going to assign you a partner, and we're going to move learning with others to be more about your personal response. You're going to name 3 things that are your favorite color, and your partner is going to guess your color, which now means they have to listen and participate in your thinking in order to think the correct answer. I like frogs. I like grass. I like when you're done throwing up and you still throw up and you get that weird color. What's the color? I was going to say green, but it's more chartreuse, really. Okay. Okay. So we're going to play with these 3 together. And somebody asked me today, you know, health teachers never get a good example. Can you give an example of engagement in health? One of the most incredible lessons I ever saw was in a school in Georgia. And that school district was right about where you are right now. We had done a summer institute like this. I'm coming back in the fall, and a particular school had decided they were going to have a showcase day where every teacher is doing an engaging lesson of at least a level 3 or 4, and I'm going to walk in and give feedback. But I've got to make a lot of classrooms because it's a high school. So I walk into a 9th grade health class, and the teacher has an aquarium filled with water but nothing else on the table, and a whole bunch of food spread out. So I started my visit. So what are you guys doing today? I don't know. He has a whole bunch of food up there and an aquarium. I said, so you have no idea what you're doing? No. Well, I'm not going to ask anything else about what you're learning because right now it's the start. So Curtis, the teacher who I met in the workshop and really enjoyed, but he has a wicked sense of humor, started class this way. Okay, boys and girls, you probably have noticed, young people, that there is a man in the back. That is Mr. John Appoletti. He is like an expert on engagement, so he is here to see you be engaged. I planned a very engaging lesson, so I really need you to engage, okay? On your table, there's a sheet of paper that's divided into 3 columns, and it says, what I predict, what I have seen, correct answer. You're going to make a prediction 20 times. I am going to throw food into an aquarium, and you're going to predict, will the food float or will it sink, okay? You can talk to each other, but first write down what you think is going to happen, predict, and then this is what Mr. Alouette would say is most important. You got to tell in the 2nd column what you've already seen in your schema, your life, that says, because I've seen that, I think this. Ready? I am now going to throw an apple into the aquarium. Write down what you predict and what you've seen. Seriously, I'm going to ask you to do this. Are you ready? I won't force the writing piece. Tell your neighbor what you predict first and then why you've seen something that informs that prediction. Go. Okay, let's call it. Who has a schema for floats? Who has a schema for sinks? I want to hear sinks first. Yes, sir. Why sinks? Okay, because of the density? That makes sense. A kid in that class said, my brother throws them from our tree at me and they hurt because they're a thick fruit. And so I think the density, I think it'll sink. And he was right on. Doesn't his logic make sense? Now, the next kid who shared, I think it'll float. What's your schema? Bobbing for apples. And immediately the first kid said, I changed my mind because I have also seen that and they float. Okay? Again, vision trumps all. So we threw it in, Curtis threw it in, and sure enough it floated. And I'm supposed to go on to the next class, but I'm like, okay, I want to see what else he puts in there. And what the hell is he teaching? I don't know what this is in the health class. So he says, okay, here's another one. Ready? Frozen lamb chop, bone in. Go at your table. Frozen lamb chop. No styrofoam, just the lamb chop, frozen with a bone. Okay, let's call it. Let's call it. Schema for floats. A schema for floats. Yes, ma'am. I have seen that too with fish fillets. They float to the top. I have to put up something heavy to keep them down. I have seen that. Anybody else have a different float schema? Yes, sir. Boys and girls, we're going to throw it in the aquarium. There's no trick here. There will just be truth. I think what you're afraid of is your truth and my truth may not match up. But that's the thing about truth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. Yes, ma'am. Lamb has a lot of fat floats. I love that. Kid in class said, now he didn't say it. It was on his Post-it note. So I'm walking around. I said, say yours. He said, I don't want to. I said, say it. He said, I think it'll float because dead bodies float. And that lamb is dead. Now, I need to go get the counselor. And then a moment later, another kid said, I think it sinks because when people die and drown, they don't float. They sink first. They don't float until they get bloated. We have a lot of schema in Fulton County, Georgia. So again, I'm trying to leave, but we did this, and he put it in, and sure enough, the lamb chop actually went to the bottom and then kind of suspended about midway. It didn't rise all the way up, so we had to write sinks. Some kids want to say, I don't want to say it sinks, I want to say sort of halfway floats. Write down whatever you want, it still looks the same. He did it 18 more times. I was so engrossed that I completely forgot the other classes that I was supposed to go to, and I forgot to even wonder, what are we learning? If somebody had walked in and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm having an incredible time. I'm making personal response predictions at the analytical level 3, and I'm making sense, and this is really powerful. I have no idea what the hell the objective is. About that time, Curtis said, now, boys and girls, you were probably wondering what our objective is. Let me post that because Mr. Antonetti says that you should post it after you've already seen something, and now that you have been engaged and seen something, I'm going to post my objective. TLWBA2, the learner will be able to recognize the importance of fiber in a healthy diet. I looked at the little guy next to me like, does that make sense to you? He said, no to you. And I said, nope, 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 nope. Curtis said, okay, you're probably wondering, what did we have to do with this? Let me tell you about fiber, first of all. Many of you know what fiber is. Fiber is the stuff in food that helps keep our digestive system working efficiently. We want the right amount of balance of fiber in our diet. If we have too much fiber, we have digestive issues. Not enough, we have digestive issues. Anybody ever been bound up, constipated? Okay, that's a fiber issue. Everybody had diarrhea? That's a fiber issue, okay? So you've all had this. Now, look at our objective. Our objective is a visualizing objective because vision trumps all, according to John Medina. And so all I want you to do is, here's your homework assignment. Tonight, I want you to look at something that would tell you, are you getting enough fiber? And you'll be looking at something that might float or might sink. I'm not going to tell you what the assignment is. Discuss at your table. Okay. I have to tell you, I saw incredible lessons all day, but that's the only one 8 years later I can still recall vividly. Because it was so applicable to myself, I didn't even make it back to the Atlanta airport before I had to stop to see how I was doing. Again, I don't know if that class was worth the engagement, but I know I'd want to do that again. I'd want to think that way. And it's not about the fiber or the disgustingness of the activity. It's just, I was making sense. I was making meaning for 40 minutes, and I really enjoyed that. Now, I'm hoping that in my next class, I don't make meaning, because I kind of need a break. And so that's okay with me, the break piece. Let's move on. We want to move now into learning with others and sense of audience. Let's take something that is very often cumbersome, monotonous, bleh, vocabulary. Harvard did a 17-year study. They followed kids walking into chemistry and walked them through exiting high school to notice how kids get concept. And Jerome Bruner had done some work in the 70s on concept attainment. And so one of the pieces that they looked at was how kids learn vocabulary. Learn it enough to use it, to make it a part of lexicon. Practice of vocabulary is really important, but entry into vocabulary is more important than practice. Because if you don't make sense of vocabulary, you will use it incorrectly. You know what I'm talking about, and that's very frustrating. That's frustrating if you don't know vocabulary well. And I find that irrespective of regardless is whatever. Okay. So in Mundelein, Illinois, I'm watching a teacher who does this. She teaches psychology, and she introduces every complex thing that she's going to teach through a series of pictures. And all the kids have to do is say, tell me a truth across the pictures. Tell me something that's true across the pictures. So she's teaching group dynamics. I'd like you to think for a moment. I'm not forcing the personal response right now. Look at the three pictures and think of something that is true. Don't say it yet. I want you to turn to the center of the table and all at the same time say something that is true about the three pictures. Ready? Go. Okay, anything that's true. What's true? These are all young people. Okay, I see that. What else can we see? They are students. They all look like they're in some sort of class or scholastic setting. What else? It may look like yearbook folders. Yes, sir. People want to fit in. How can you see that? Okay, so this is what just happened. This is a really great moment. We had a truth, and an inference. Analysis is based upon truths that other people can see. If you infer something or draw a conclusion that other people cannot see, that's an opinion. Inference, analysis comes after accuracy of the truth. So the teacher lets kids come up with all the ways they can see what they see that are true. Some of the kids will jump very quickly to, I think this is, everybody wants to fit in. And then she says, these three slides teach us one of the things we're going to be working on over the next couple of days. We're going to be looking at the concept in psychology of conformity. So we're going to be looking at the Ash studies of conformity. Take a moment, tell me what's true in these three pictures. Ready? To your neighbor's truth. Truth. Okay, let me put you back together. Here's one of the things I love about this moment. When we let kids talk in truth, the task automatically differentiates. Because the kid who sees the pictures and says, oh, they all have 4 or 5 people in them, is telling the truth. I don't know why that person saw the numbers, but they saw the numbers. Somebody might say, oh, they're all male. And then somebody at the table says, wait, I think that's a woman in the front of that other group. Oh, you're right. They're all people. And that person who says male will default to people. They'll change their idea a little bit. I hope they won't jump to something completely different. I am partially deaf in this ear, and I know that that gets me in trouble in class sometimes because when I ask kids to repeat themselves, they don't. What'd you get for problem 17? A 41.5? I'm sorry, what? A 45.1? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. 4.15? One more time. B? I mean, they just guess and keep changing their answer. I want you to own your truth. Now, I don't know if you know where this is going, but eventually Mrs. Fisher is going to teach this idea that people will, I've forgotten the name of the actual term. See, it doesn't even matter. The term doesn't matter. Here's the concept. People will sometimes ignore their own thoughts or their own safety to follow somebody blindly. They will go, it's groupthink. Thank you, groupthink. Thank you. Beautiful. See, there's always somebody with cable who knows the word. But every kid who doesn't have cable can still see the concept. Bubba saw it. I didn't remember it was groupthink. One more. Take a moment and look at these 3 pictures. Bottom one's kind of hard to see in the bar. It's often hard to see in a bar. You're already there. Go to your table. Truth, truth, truth. Freeze if you're pointing. 12 people right now are going, Fia. We're making meaning. We're using our hands and we're showing where the truth is. For those of you who want to jump to the answer, it's the bystander effect. What you just said at your table is what the bystander effect is. It's that somebody's in trouble but everybody's not helping. Some people think other people, they're just going on with their lives. We're going to study in psychology the bystander effect. If you've ever watched Don Quixote on What Would You Do? It's an hour full of the bystander effect. So again, I sometimes think a complex vocabulary word that we teach kids, we do it in the wrong order. We give them the word and then some examples and say, give me more examples. And we're surprised when the examples aren't quite right, but it's because they haven't formulated the concept yet. Vision trumps all. Okay, let's move forward. Let's go to math. Okay, thank you. That's the response I wanted. Yay. We're going to do a math problem. It is predicated upon personal response. Personal response in math can mean that there's more than one right answer. In the math activity we're about to do, there's only one right answer. So the personal response is actually your entry that you start making sense. Everybody needs a Post-it note because everybody's going to have a personal response moment. I think I shared this strategy yesterday, but I want to share it again. It may take a while before we build this emotional safety. If you cannot get started, if you cannot figure out how to get started, stand up and look quickly at the people at your table. If nothing happens for you then, move quickly around the room. I'm quite serious. Let's talk about efficiency of teaching. If my kids in class experience a math problem or a scientific inquiry problem or some sense-making moment and they are paralyzed and can't make sense, the typical teacher-student role is I will come and help you get unstuck. And I will say, could you, what if you, or I have seen this too. I have done this. I actually got this caught on tape. Somebody filmed in my classroom. I thought, that is horrifying. I modeled this great attack of a problem. I gave a problem to my kid that was a little bit different. This is a chemistry problem. Just a little bit different. It was just a reverse operation. But I changed the stoichiometry problem, and I said, now you try that one. And kids start working, and then the hands go up. And I walk over. What's wrong? I don't know how to do this one. Well, where are you getting stuck? All of it? Oh, well, here, show me. Let me show you. So, I'll be right there. I'll be right there. Shh, just a minute. Okay. What's wrong? I don't know how to do it. What part? All of it. Okay. And after the fourth kid, I say, okay, stop. Let's do another one together, which means stop thinking. I'll do another one for you. So in this moment, we can increase efficiency if I say, look, if you're stuck, I don't want anyone to teach you. But you may certainly look around at the world, and if something makes sense to you, you'll know when it does. And because there are 28 kids in my class, one kid getting up and going like this goes, I'm going to do the circles. That tally mark thing made sense. Oh, I saw what you did there. But I don't let them stand long enough to copy it. Just enough to say, that makes sense. Because if you've ever been in a real-life moment in a foreign situation or even a foreign country and you don't know how to behave, the first thing you do is, what's everybody else doing? Okay, that worked for him. He got on the subway and it didn't chew him up. Okay, I'm going to do what she did. Mind the gap. And I get on because I just watched. Then we're going to take this to personal response into learning with others, where I'm going to ask you to compare your strategy. For those of you who were not invited behind the curtain, I asked one member at your table to use a very specific strategy. so we can talk about it. They don't know the answer. They don't have anything ahead of you. They know nothing. Well, sorry. I was with people who were clueless back there, just as I would be. So here we go. Here's the problem. And I'd like you to just stick with it for just a minute to make sense. Don't worry about answering it yet. Dan played 3 games of marbles. In the first game, he lost 1/2 of his marbles. In the second game, he won 4 marbles. In the third game, he won the same number of marbles as he had at the end of the second game. He finished with 32 marbles. The question is, how many marbles did Dan start with? Now, just to make sure in this differentiated setting that reading is not getting in our way, let's just do a real fast knowledge assessment of the question. How many games of marbles did he play? Did he win or lose marbles in the first game? How many? What happened in the second game? Win or lose? How many? Third game, win or lose? How many? The same as he had at the end of the second game. Okay, cool. Will your answer be in dollar signs? Okay. What is your answer going to be in? Start making sense. Silently by yourself. We're not going to get anxious. Just go ahead and start. Let's come back together. So we were perfect learners. We did this exactly as learners would do. I walked around the room, and do you know the question I was asked? Is this the right answer? 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 Nobody said, what do you think of my strategy? Nobody said, does this make sense? People said, is this the right answer? I have to separate, especially in something as procedural as mathematics, making sense from the answer. So here's what I know. Raise your hand if you started backwards pictorially and drew 32 marbles. Okay, raise your hands high because I'm really quite proud of those of you who just did that. So the people who just raised their hand and started with 32 marbles at the end and then manipulated that number of marbles back forward, not only started backwards, great entryway, but started pictorially. I'm a little saddened that only 5 people did that. Because everything I know about the brain says if you don't see the sense, if you can't see it, you can't move it. And there were people who were using numbers and they didn't know why they were using those numbers. And I don't mean that as a slight. Our brain found a number that made some sense to us when we started playing with a number, but we may not be able to articulate why it made sense to us because it's subconscious. Because when the brain cannot find a picture, it finds the familiar. Landmark numbers. In a base 10 system, we jump to 10s and 5s and 2s in a base 10 system because those are landmark numbers that make sense to us even if we can't see them. At every table, I asked one person to do this. The strategy is called guess and check. First of all, how many people started backwards, started with the 32 and worked their way backwards? Okay. How many people tried to start forward and work their way forward? If you got really stuck, here's what I think happens most often to kids. You were trying to start backwards and your brain switched to forward. Or you were trying to start forward and your brain switched to backwards. We didn't let our brain stay where it was comfortably. We thought, I don't think this is working. And we panicked and tried a different thing. We gave up too fast in our sense making. I asked somebody at every table to just guess and check, which literally means take any number and say, he had 1 marble. I'm going to say he had 1. Well, at the end of the first game, he only has a half a marble. 1 is not the right answer. And then the brain will go to another number. I'm going to go to 2. 2. At the end of that game, he loses half, so he has 1. Then he earns 4, he has 5. Then he doubles the 5 to 10. That's not enough. I'm going to go bigger since my end wasn't big enough. That is making sense. And what I see across the country, I don't know why, I see across the country that I don't see in other countries is our kids, when they're stuck, will not guess and check. They will not enter if they're not sure how to be right. But starting with the number 1 and running it through that problem gives you great information. that you can then use now to generate a second hypothesis and work your way through. Of the guess and checkers, how many just were lucky and guessed the right number of 24 right away? How many guess and checkers took 2 numbers before you got there? How many took 3 numbers before you got there? 4 numbers before you got there? 5 numbers before you got there? 6 numbers before you got there? 7 numbers before you got there? Nobody got 7? Nobody ever gets 7. I don't know why in this problem 6 is the most guesses it ever takes anybody. Because after the first 3 guesses, there is a very serious truth happening about entry into the problem and exit into the problem. And the brain needs to see the first 3. But if our randomizing the numbers didn't follow a pattern, it may take 5 numbers before the pattern starts to show itself. How many felt debilitated? Anybody felt debilitated? Okay, then you know what? We went too far. We went too far. We should have just gone to the part where some people have drawn marbles. Some people have said, I'm trying 5. And maybe just articulated. Tell me 6 different entry strategies that people used. Now that you've heard 6, which one made more sense to you? We were in Kyoto, Japan, and saw this activity, and I loved it because I hate when the United States is compared to Japan, especially in math and science, because culturally they appreciate mathematics unlike the way we do here. They don't have Barbie saying math is hard in Japan. But I watched a high school teacher with 40 kids in a class give a problem, and then as he rang a little diner bell, ding, and all the kids started to work personal response. Complete silence. Very structured. He walked around and went, He sent 6 kids to whiteboards around the room. And as those kids continued to work, everybody else stopped. And they just looked around. He rang a bell again, and all the kids stood up and they made a circle around the room. And they moved around the room, standing in front of the 6 moments of start. When the circle got back to where it started, he rang the bell again, and the kids split. 20 went over here. 5 went over here. 3 went over here. Where are they going? To the model that makes sense. And what struck me was not only is that highly effective learner engagement, it was very efficient teaching. Because he could have only in that same amount of time modeled one way in. Now the kids went to the one that made sense. It was interesting for me to watch the number of kids who started and got stuck. So they didn't go to the one that looked like theirs. They went to somebody else's that made more sense. And again, when something makes more sense and you go to it, that's called learning. At your table, just react to that, because I think sometimes in math the anxiety is so high about entry, I can either as a teacher be efficient or effective, but I think that goes across all disciplines. Talk about efficient versus effective for just a moment, maybe using this as an anchor. 3 minutes just to have that conversation, please. Let's come back together. Again, in a room this size, I feel like there's a whole lot of me talking and not a whole lot of interaction. Thoughts or questions before we move on, though? I am going to pause for that. Loud thoughts or loud questions before we move forward? I want to share a conversation we just had. A colleague just said, you know, when I teach balancing equations in chemistry, and the kids are struggling, how can I make that more, whatever? You know what? I don't want personal response. I don't want personal response in balancing chemical equations. What I see that kids struggle with is equation, balance. I don't have it on the screen, but I just want you to see this in your head. I want to share with you a math problem that 78% of kids in 6th grade and above will get wrong. 8 plus 5. Now 8 plus 4. 8 plus 4 equals box plus 5. 8 plus 4 equals box plus 5. What will 78% of kids say the answer is? What goes in the box? 12. 8 plus 4 equals box. 8 plus 4 equals 12. Another 8% will say 17. 8 plus 4 equals 12 goes in the box, plus 5, 17. That's not the question. The question is not what does this equal, it's how do we make these balance and equivalent and equal? One of the biggest misconceptions I see across K-12 is kids don't understand what an equation is. So I don't know how to increase personal response in this. I can increase vision trumps all. So before we start in balancing equations, having 2 of these and 3 of these, which means we're getting a 6 somewhere involved mathematically, I'm going to use Legos. And I'm going to show you the products, and then you get the reactants. And so, well, I can't get that product, Mr. Antonetti, because I need 2 of these yellow Legos when they get combined in a new way. And I only have 1 over here. Then what are you going to need? 2 of these. Well, you can't just have 2 of that yellow Lego because that yellow Lego is a part of a 4-prong Lego with 2 reds attached to it. So you're going to have 2 of that whole thing. Now what? Well, now I've got too many of these over here. Well, so what do you need to do with the products if nothing is created nor destroyed? And as silly as it sounds, I have to slow my chemistry kids, even my AP chemistry kids, if I want them to see balance. If I want them to do balance, I teach the method. But I have seen kids who can do math and do not know why they're doing it or what they're doing. And doing math will get you through the SOL test and prepare you to hit a wall in the future. And algebra teachers, geometry teachers, where are you? Because you know this. Our elementary colleagues are working as hard as they can. And when they teach the procedure, every time they teach a procedure, a little bit of concept dies. It's like It's a Wonderful Life. Teacher says every time we do a crisscross, keep, change, a little part of your brain dies. But you know what? It doesn't show up until algebra or geometry. Because that's when the concepts have to be there or you're going to struggle. So I want to show you a math example. Again, not because it's math. I want you to walk this classroom. We're going to walk this classroom, and I'm going to ask you about what's going on in a minute. I'm going to let you watch it 2 ways. The first time you watch it is you can just be a teacher walking into the classroom as I was, watching Mrs. Winningham's classroom. Mrs. Winningham teaches what they call credit recovery. It's not high school. It's kids in junior high who are behind in mathematics with certain mathematical holes, and her job is to catch them up. Okay? As soon as it's over, you can turn around and say whatever you want about Miss Winningham's class. She's not here. Okay? If you feel the need to be ugly today. This is the only time you're going to get to do it. You can say whatever you want. She is not here. We're not worried about her feelings. You can say it's wonderful. You can say it's horrible. This is Mrs. Winningham's credit recovery middle school math.
Start with what you know. Start with what you know. They have told us that the length is 3 units. So you're going to draw a vertical line of 3 units. Where's your straight edge? You don't have one now? Okay. 3. Now wait, before you do all of that, what do we know? We know the area has to be like 10.5, right? So if that's there, if we come up, if it's 2, will you get an area of 10.5? Yeah? No way, Jose. Do we have 10.5 now? 6, that's 7, 7.5. Not quite, so you got to go up higher. Right? Okay. So Fernando and I are over there, and we're just drawing these lines on this grid paper, getting on my nerves. I want an arithmetic way. What can I do to find this out without having to do that? I don't want to count those squares anymore, Max.
You could do 10 and 5, 10 divided by 3.
Equals what?
3 and 5.
No, equals what part of, what am I trying to find?
Equals this height. Width.
We've been working with length and width right now, and we're going to talk about why we should say base or height, or why we could say base or height. Okay? So I could divide this into thirds. What was our mental calculation method for division when we didn't want to have to divide? How am I going to think about division? Greg?
You multiply, you think 3 times what equals 10 and a half.
Right, so I want to change this around now because I can do that. Why can I do that? Yes.
Because multiplication and division are in the same fact family.
Okay, multiplication and division are in the same fact family. If I'm looking for missing pieces, I can just do the opposite operation, right? So, 3 times what is going to get me to 10 and 5/10? What's going to get me close? What whole number is going to get me close? Andy? 3 times 3 is 9. How much do I need now? 1 and 1/2 or 1 and 5/10, right? So what can I do now? I'd like you to really think about 1 1/2. How many, can I divide that up into 3 equal parts?
Yes.
So I've got 3 what in 1 1/2? 3 halves.
Yeah, I got that.
3 halves. So 5/10. 3 times 3 and 5/10. Will that give me 10 and 5/10?
Yes.
Yep. Yes, John.
If the 4 was for the rectangle E was length, and the 3 and 5/10 was the height,
Okay.
then you would just all you have to do is put 3 and 5/10 because it's minus.
Okay. What you're saying is we can reverse these. We don't have to keep them. We can assign this value to length as opposed to width, or width as opposed to length.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect thing because that's exactly where we're going to come back to tomorrow to talk about what does all this stuff mean and why do we want to call it base as opposed to length, or height as opposed to width.
So with your colleagues, just respond, react in any way you want. You can say anything you want. Just react to that moment, and then we're going to structure the conversation a little differently. Okay, let me put you back together, please. I love this video. I know it's dated. She's got the overhead projector. She's got the old Macs. I don't care. I will never not use this video because I think it points out where a school that's moving needs to look. If I'm not careful, I walk into that classroom and I'm watching Mrs. Winningham, and I'm getting terribly distracted from the task. Good, bad, or ugly, I'm thinking, okay, did she just say to Fernando, no way, Jose? And I might decide, oh my gosh, she has a racist issue. Or I don't like her style, or I do like her style. I don't care. See, one of the things that happens when we get together like this is we have to be very careful that we do not confuse adult teaching style with the substance of the task. And she's very distracting. For whatever reason, you might have been distracted. I think there's a lot going in that classroom. We've got to figure out what to look at. So I'm going to talk, and when I was in there, I'll be the first to admit, I'm like, I don't even know what the math is. I can't, it has something to do with area. If I were going to go through our 4 questions that we use when we walk into a classroom without talking to a kid and say, what are they doing? Math. What are they learning? Something about math. Got some division maybe and some area, I don't know, math. I need to talk to a kid. So I was a little confused until I talked to Fernando. So Fernando, what are you guys doing today? That's the little kid she was talking to, the young man she was talking to when he walked in. He said, we're doing math our way. I said, what do you mean math our way? What's math our way? Well, today's our way day. I said, what is our way day? Now, I have a whole series of questions that I want to ask, but I'm staying right there because what my brain wants to know is, what are you talking about? What is math our way? Well, on our way day, she gives us a problem that's kind of like something we've already done, and we decide how we can make sense of it. I said, okay, cool. I have another question that has nothing to do with anything. Why are some of the children in class standing today? He said, oh, because they found our way works. I said, what? So on our way day, when you try a strategy and you make sense, when we first started this, you didn't have to commit, but now you have to commit to a Post-it note. So you put on a Post-it note what strategy you think you'll use to enter the problem. And so yesterday we were doing problems with rectangles where she gave us a side and she gave us the area. we had to figure out the area, side and side, we had to figure out the area. This time she gave us a side and an area, and we have to figure out the other side. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do graphic. That's going to be my strategy. So I wrote graph paper down on my Post-it note. See all the Post-it notes back there on the board? There are only 2 of us doing graphic. You can see my Post-it note and Thomas, that's the guy in the red. We both did graphic. So we put our strategy up there saying what we're doing. And then, well, actually, that's not my Post-it note. There's somebody else doing it. My Post-it's not up there yet because I'm not standing. Because what happens is when you think your strategy works and you find an answer and you call her over, she'll come over and she'll say, your strategy works. You're a teacher. Put your Post-it note up. You're a teacher. You are open for business. And then you stand up when your Post-it note's up there. So if somebody else is trying to use the same strategy and they're stuck, you don't ask Miss Winningham. You find an expert in that strategy. And usually I stand up pretty fast. So I don't know if it's just because I'm tired, because I can't figure this one out. Because it's 10.5 is messing me up. Because I was graphing on my grid paper and I went 3, because that's one side. I went 3 boxes up and I drew that line. And then I went over 2, well that's 6. I went over 3, well that's 9. I went over 4, that's 12. I passed 10.5. So I went back to 9 and made a box that's 3 by 3, which is 9, and then added 1.5 boxes, but that's not a rectangle anymore because it still has to be a whole rectangle. And so that's why when she walked away, I don't even know what she said after, because tomorrow it's going to be her way. And what I love about Miss Winningham's approach is she really has taken that idea of 1 out of 5 or 20% to almost mean 1 day a week. You're going to try a problem that you've not seen and you commit to a strategy. I would have loved to have seen it at the beginning of the year. The kids tell me it was quite messy at the beginning of the year because I don't know what my strategy is. I just started drawing a picture. And then she told us that's called drawing a picture. And so when we get started, she says, commit to your strategy. I'm drawing a picture. So if you go back to the marbles a moment ago, some of us were drawing a picture. Some of us were guessing and checking. Some of us were reversing operations starting with the end in mind. I don't know what your strategy was, but how cool is it that these kids can own their strategy? I love the emotional safety that you get to stand up when you've got away, but if you don't want to keep sitting, you can ask for help. What struck me, and this was like March of the year, I've got all these kids standing and nobody's asking for help. So I asked the little girl next to Fernando, I said, so I see that you're still sitting too. Do you want to ask for help? She said, no. I said, why not? She said, because I want to find my way. I said, it's more fun to find your own way. Tomorrow, she's going to help us. But it's more fun. When we first started doing this, every time Kathleen would stand up, people would say, come over here, come over here. And Kathleen started teaching. And now you just saw her over there. She's picking her arm because nobody wants her help anymore. And that's the good thing because now we want to figure it out ourselves. What I thought at first looked like a messy classroom that I didn't really appreciate because of the task design is really a very powerful moment. And if nothing else, Fernando is not paying attention to the teacher because he's still persevering and trying to make sense. And about the time I said, thank you, buddy, I understand the problem is the 1.5. He said, oh my gosh, I could just do half and half and half, and that's still a straight line. And he was like, come on, I'm standing up, I'm standing up. And she said, it's too late, baby, it's too late. But did it work for you? And he said, it did. She said, congratulations, Post-it note up. And as everybody else was walking out, he stayed to put his Post-it note up for nobody. Everybody else is leaving. But there was something about that commitment because he wanted his response validated. Me made sense. Any other thoughts about any of the activities we've done today in the engaging qualities? I have 3 remaining, and I have shortchanged them a little bit because I think they are the ones that already make the most sense to us as teachers, but I do want to clean them up just a little bit. To me, the biggest idea, if you asked me to summarize where we are, this is it. The first engaging qualities, added to learning with others, added to sense of audience, because I think Fernando had personal response with emotional intellectual safety. He had the opportunity to learn with others if he so chose to, if he so chooses. But I love the sense of audience that they want their Post-it note up, but a Post-it note up does not simply mean success. Persevering without answering the question could still mean success mathematically. Every classroom I've been into, if you're looking for a graduate project, if you're looking for a doctoral dissertation, this is the research I'd love for somebody to do. Because we've seen it in our research, but I can't articulate it and fully pull it out. Kids who think in the first 5 minutes of class think all year long at a higher level. Kids who get a chance to make sense or find a truth in content in the first 5 minutes of class always end up being the kids or the classrooms that are thinking the most. I think it goes back to something Medina said. If in the first 5 minutes I make sense, I will stick with you to see if it gets validated. I will stick with you to challenge you on that. I will stick with you to continue to share my thought. The three remaining strategies, engaging qualities we have are sense of audience. We've already done that one. Choice. Choice is not in the task rubric, because when we look at the task rubric, we're looking at one task at a time. But many of us in this room have learned the power of letting kids choose from a menu, whether it's the tic-tac-toe activity menu or the product menu. You can build the diorama, you can do the live stream, you can do the blog, you can do whatever. The minute kids think they are making a decision, they're more engaged. I want to say that again. They think they're making a decision. Do you want to do this or this or this? And human beings will go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm going to do that. And it's this sense of ownership. It is absolutely manipulative. It is not real personal response. You are just defaulting to something you think you're making a decision about. Again, I learned this by being married. My wife will say, honey, do you want to unload the dishwasher or take out the trash? I was watching the ball game, and before I knew it, I'll say, I'll take out the trash. Oh my gosh, I just volunteered. The answer was no. But because it sounded like a choice, I thought, okay, I'll pick one. And that's the value of this strategy. Kids will give us more energy if they are taking control of the task or the product. The last two are right there, novelty and variety and authenticity. We've talked a little bit about them. It saddens me that those experiences that are often the most authentic in high school are for kids, novelty and variety. A field trip, kindergarten through 12th grade. When you go somewhere, when you leave school to go see something in the real world that is authentic because you're going to the real world in order to learn the thing, and sadly, that's novelty and variety. What I know that technology can do is technology can get me an authentic conversation with a scientist in China that I couldn't have in the past. And for a while as a teacher, the fact that I could have kids tweeting or interacting with a scientist in China was novelty and variety. It's not novelty and variety, it's authenticity. You can do that. I watched a kindergarten teacher who had kids after they read a book by, who is the author? Robert Munch, Love You Forever. They read this book and the kids gave Robert Munch feedback on his book. And the teacher said, we're going to tweet this at Robert Munch. 10 minutes later, Robert Munch is tweeting back to the kindergartners. And the kindergartners are like, that's really cool that he did that. The teacher's like, and the kids don't see it as a big deal because we put his name in the Twitter. I mean, we used his name, so of course we expected him to respond. If nothing else, he should like it. But they went back and forth for about 2 days on how adults think the book is really emotional and kids think it's funny. And how he wrote it to be funny, but because of his illness of his mother, adults really respond to that book. And I just thought, how powerful is that the kids are interacting with that author in ways they never could before? And so I'm also about this with technology. It's time to not to worry about SAMR. I don't know if y'all talk about SAMR. What is the role of technology? SAMR says technology is really powerful when it transforms the learning moment. In other words, it's different than it could have ever been. My kids don't know that it's different than it used to be. SAMR is dead now. It's a teacher moment for the learner. It's, do I get to interact with the real world because that's authenticity? Or do we stay in the confines of the classroom? I will admit that's my struggle because I came late to this. I was out of the classroom, I was a principal when the internet really started to play a role in classroom. My oldest son is a band director, and while we were driving on vacation, he graded student audition tapes for his band. In the car, he'd say, we're just sitting there driving, he'd say, you don't mind if I listen to some auditions, do you? Google Classroom, I don't know how he does it, he's got them, and they play Karen Eves. Feedback. And he says to the car, feedback. And then we're driving along, and 10 minutes later he says, what? Good. Karen knows what she can do next. On vacation in Maine, it was that fast. He doesn't do summer band anymore until August. He gained his summer back because the kids practice. His guard does routines and videotapes it, sends it to other guard members, and 4 guard members must critique it and offer advice. He says when they come back now, he said, I don't have to worry about cleaning up the routines because the kids self-clean without having to get them together and turning on the air conditioning. So we've thrown a lot at you with the engaging qualities. You're going to play with them more in your job likes. We can't get the C5s without these qualities. We're not going to transform our classrooms without slicing these in. But none of them are new. We've already known what they were. I want my AA team to help me put them in. Okay, so Mike, you have... Mike is going to come to the mic, and he has a couple of housekeeping things. During the break, if you have any other thoughts that you want to share or questions, I'm here, so please feel free. Okay, Mike.